Today's webinar is on refunds, returns, exchanges, and bad debts. Those are the things that we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start out with returning a product, and we're going to start out with returns. And the returns are usually something to do with a product. So I'm going to open up FrameReady. And here we are, and let me just make that a little bit larger. And just in case you didn't know, you can zoom in there and make it larger on your screen. So we're going to start out with a customer comes in and they want to return a product. And there are two scenarios here. One is that the return is going to be on the same day that they purchased it. The other scenario is that it's going to be on a different day, whether that's one day later or 3 weeks later. Depending on your store policies, you will know how to deal with this. But what we want to do first of all is start out with the customer who comes back in on the same day. So if they came back in with the item, and we're going to say that they want to exchange this item for a different product. So I'm going to find the customer. They may have their invoice in hand. They may not. I may just simply ask them for their name. Okay, if their name was on the invoice, and I know that it's today's date. So I can just easily select today from the drop-down calendar and say perform find, and that should find me this particular customer's item that they purchased. So they purchased a print, which was the trees in a yellow sky, and they've decided that they don't want to go ahead with this. Because this is the same day, okay, same invoice, same day, what we can do is we can use this exact same invoice so that we don't have to create a new invoice for this. So same day, same invoice, that's the key. So she wants to exchange this for a different item. So there's a couple of possibilities here. One is that it's going to be the exact same item, and it might be or a different item with a different value. So we're going to go through those scenarios as well. So starting out with, this item is in our inventory right now. It has been taken out of inventory in order to sell a quantity of one. What I want to do is make sure that it goes back into inventory. So just to show you, we're going to go back to the products file, and it's item 103314. So let's go find that. And we have 103314. And here it is. And you can see that it has a quantity of 1. And it was last sold today because they came in and made that purchase. So when I go back to the invoice, I want to return this product, and it's going to change this to have a quantity of 2. So I'm going to go back to the invoice. And on the invoice, I'm going to do the data entry. It's going to tell me this item has already been paid in full. That's okay. We're going to continue anyway. Like I said, same day, same invoice. So now I want to go in and put in the item that they want to exchange it for. And the product that she has picked out is a different item, but it is the same price. So it's got the same amount. So this is the product that she wants to purchase. This is the one that she has purchased. So I want to put that item back into inventory. So I'm going to go and copy that number. And now I'm going to look it up and put it on there again. And this time I'm going to say -1. If I had just deleted that item, it would have left the inventory as it was. So the inventory would not have changed. And then I would have to go manually back into the inventory and change it. The other advantage to this is that it's keeping a track record for me. And if you decide that you wanted to have the two items side by side in here, just to make it look better, we could do that as well. I can delete the item right now for the Black-Eyed Susan because that wasn't taken out of inventory yet. Inventory is only updated when I'm clicking on the done button, and that's when it takes it out of inventory. So I'm going to go back in and look up that item for the Black-Eyed Susan, just typing in a few letters, it's found it. It's taking it out of inventory for me. So I have the original purchase, the item they returned, and those two are going to zero each other out. And now I have the new product that she is exchanging for. The yellow sky is going to be exchanged for the Black-Eyed Susan. There we go. So nothing has changed down here on the payment. The payment is the same, and we can carry on when I click done. I do want to make sure that I put a note down here in the bottom left corner, exchanged print for another one. Some note, if you want to put a note in there, didn't like the color. It was too soft yellow, wanted something more vibrant. You might also want to put in the initials of who made that note and what the day was as well, even though this was on the same day. So I'm going to put that note in anyway, just if people get into the habit of making an entry into the invoice note field, and this note does not print out onto the invoice, so that if I did decide that I wanted to give this invoice to the customer, and I've got it selected so that it's showing the print on there as well, so that I can put that on, print it out, and in this case, I could just even print the second page, and that would be fine for this customer. So we're going to go back to the inventory now and take a look at the inventory and see how that has affected our inventory for the yellow sky. So here we are, and there it is. It's showing me that we have a quantity on hand of 2 now. And it does say that, yes, previously it was last sold on this date, but it was also returned on that date. We don't have a date showing the return date, but at least you know that it was there, it was sold. And if I looked on the invoice, I would find that date on the invoice for that particular item. So that is an invoice for an item that was returned on the same day. So now, same day, same invoice. We're going to look at if it's a different day, different invoice. We're going to go find the invoice for this customer who's coming in, and they happen to have their invoice with them. And this is the invoice number. They purchased a green vase, and they want to exchange it for a different vase. The difficulty here is that they have purchased this already, and this was back several days ago, and it could have been a month ago, could have been any time frame, whatever's within your policy to say that if they wanted to exchange it, they can. So now that it's on a different day, I don't want to change this invoice, okay, because it's telling me that the money came in on this day. Now, technically, I really could change the items that are on there. It's just that if I did a report based on the items that I sold that day, it's going to show me that that item was sold on that day, and so was the exchanged item sold on that day as well. So what I'm going to do instead is that I could create a new invoice for this and put in that item. Lots of different choices. I think one of the most important things for you to do, though, is to talk to your accountant and find out what your accountant suggests that you do. If they want things on certain terminology that you're using, then make sure that you're using the terminology that they recommend that you use. Now on this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually, and this is not a refund, it is an exchange. So I'm going to say that in this case, I probably could use the exact same invoice since I'm not running any reports. And this would be the exact same thing that I'm going to go in and click on the purple data entry. It's been paid in full, continue, enter in the different item that they want, and then make sure that I take this one out of inventory, put the new item back into inventory. I don't believe that that would change any of the inventory reports necessarily, because I don't know that we have anything. Actually, we do have reports that said if you were selling something and it was sold on this day. So you know what? Let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and create a different invoice for this. And I'm going to click on the new invoice button in the top of the screen. Now this important, I do want to know who the customer is. So this is for Wilson Peters, and it's the green vase that he's returning. You will have the advantage of having the customer standing in front of you and also having the items that they're sending back to you in their hand. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and enter in the green vase that they are returning. So I'm going to say vase, and it's the green one that's being returned. And this is important. We're going to go to the quantity. I'm going to say it's a quantity of -1. So there we have -1. It's taken it and put it back into inventory for me. And now when I pick the other one that they want, and they wanted the blue one instead of the green one. Now this is the one, it's a positive amount of 1. And that is all I need to do. So it's taken this item out of inventory, it's put the other one into inventory. The two items are the exact same value. So what's happened now is the balance is 0. I don't need to have any payment on here. So when I click done, I'm going to go back over to here and say exchanged for different product, okay, or whatever you want. Again, put your initials in, put in the date so that you know when this happened, although you've got the date of the invoice here. But any notes that you want to enter in, go ahead and put them in. The second thing that people might want to do is, similar to an exchange, they might want to cancel an order that they've placed for framing. Now that again should be following your policy on framing to say how, when can they cancel this? Is it within the certain time period that they're allowed to do that or not? So let's say that this is the same day. This customer, and we're going to find their invoice now, and this customer has decided that they want to cancel it. They can't go ahead with it for whatever reason. They check their bank account, check with their spouse, and they're not going to go ahead with this order. So we've already created the invoice and we have the items that are on there. And I've already started doing some of this. So I'm going to take that off. There we go. So we've got the order on here. The chances are they have made a deposit. Most people would. If they didn't have the deposit on here, this would be very easy. You can just simply unpost the work order, change it back to an estimate, and then void this invoice to say that the customer is not going ahead with the order. So we could do that. And in fact, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to change this just for a moment. We'll take that payment off. Okay, so if this was the case where the customer had created this today, they didn't make a payment, you're one of the shops that doesn't require a payment, in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click on the button that says delete the work order. Would you like to unpost this before moving forward? I'm going to say yes. Okay, it's removed from this. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to say void this invoice. Are you sure you want to void it? Yes. And now I'm going to go down and make a note to say that canceled order. There we go, order. There we go. Put my date, put my initials in there. And I want to go back to that order that this customer had. And we're going to go right back to her orders. And that was the one with the horses, going directly back to her order. And this is now going to be made into an estimate because she's not going ahead with it. I don't want to order the materials. I don't want to order any of the supplies. We're going to go to the next scenario, and that is that the customer has agreed to this. We're going to post it to an invoice, post only, okay, and she's going to give you a deposit. So we'll take her payment on this. She's put a deposit on there of half, and we'll say done. Now, later on in the day, she calls back, or she returns to your business, and she said she doesn't want to go ahead with this at all. So now we're into the position where we either need to give her a refund for her money. So this is on the same day that they have canceled this, and we do need to issue the refund. So what I'm going to suggest that we do, and we also want to remove the order off of here as well. So when canceling this, there are several things that we need to do. And I'm just going to pull up a screenshot for you here to show you that the things that we want to do is that we want to enter a description in here to say that we've canceled the order. We want to put a category into this as well, okay? And then we're going to unpost the items that were on there previously so that we can remove them. And then we're going to issue a refund for her payment. So let's go through those three things. Now I'm going to put that description in here first because I want to know what the work order number is. And if I delete it first, then I won't remember what it is. So I'm going to type in here canceled order, and I'm going to put in the number there. So it's C0093, which is easy to see because it's right up here. Okay, and then I want to go to the category field. And I'm going to say, if you don't see cancellation in here and you want to add something, you can click right back into the empty field above that drop-down list and type in the word cancellation, and now it will be in your drop-down list. As long as the item is in there in the first place, it will now appear in the drop-down list. Now, I don't need to put any money in here because this isn't about refunding the work order here. It's about refunding the amount that she has paid down here. So now I can go back in. I want to unpost this. Moment. Let's go on to the next one, and that is the different day, because I think that's where I'm getting confused. So if we go to the other one, and that's the one that's in my head right now, so let's deal with that one first. We're going to go to invoice number 100928. And this is the customer who has made this a payment in full, and they've decided to cancel the order. So if it's within your policy that you can refund them the amount that you want to, then we're going to go ahead and do that. So the thing is that I need to make up a new invoice for this. This invoice has already been processed. What I want to do is create a new one now. And I'm going to put the customer's name in there. There she is. And now I can put that work order number in there. Okay. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and put in the minus amount on here. So the customer is going to be refunded this amount. And this is the amount that's going to go back to them. You have two choices on the refund. You could go back and say, you know, what is the refund that I'm going to issue to them? Refunds are usually down towards the bottom of the work order screen, or sorry, the drop down tender list. And you can either refund them the exact amount they had, or you could issue them a store credit. And if you wanted to learn more about the store credits and how they work, you can use the video that we did earlier, the webinar on gift certificates, gift cards, and store credits. And that will work for that. If this person had paid with Visa, I would have that already, and I would say this was how they paid for it, and then say done. And now I can give them an invoice showing that we had refunded their money as they had requested. If the customer decided, or you decided, that we're not going to issue a refund, we're actually going to give them a store credit, then in that case, enter under the payment, go down to the bottom where it says refund store credit. And when we issue the store credit, you are actually holding this money for this customer until they come back. And when I click done, it's going to tell me how much the balance is for the store credit, the amount that's being issued to them. And it's going to give me the option to print out a small receipt, and you can initial that, and it's going to store this in the gift certificate file. So you don't need to have a printout if you don't want to. And it's also going to store the information on the customer record in the contacts file. The next time that Mary Winston comes in, it will know that she has a store credit for this exact amount, and it will apply that to the next invoice that you have created for her. Super. So Chrissy, I think it's time for us to go to our poll. If you would like to pull the poll up and go ahead and run that.
All right, bear with me. I feel like my internet's choppy, but we'll try. On framing, is your policy to ask for a payment in full, 50% deposit, a deposit of some amount, or no set policy? Results.
Excellent. So most people are requesting a payment in full or 50% deposit. That is fantastic and always recommended. And great thing for you to be able to say, you know, when you've completed the design with the customers, to say, you know, are you ready to pay for that in full, or do you want to pay for 50% if you give them the choice? But if you pay for that in full, even better yet. And taking the 50% deposit is definitely a good idea, because what that does is that means that you're not going to be out of pocket for all the materials that you need to purchase. Okay, so we're going to go into the next portion, and that is returns. So this is where we did the exchange, where somebody exchanged it for a different product. A return is going to be very, very similar to that, so that if we were to go back to the invoice and see any one of these, let's just go take a look at some of them. And somebody decided that they wanted to return this particular product, then what we can do is just, and if it is the same day and they were going to return it, then I can go back in here and use the same invoice, same day, okay? And then in here, I'm going to put that exact same product back in. And I'm going to type that. I should have copied it. Copying it is so much faster. If you've got a barcode scanner, that is even faster yet. And I'm going to say -1 is the quantity. And now down here, it's showing me that I actually owe the customer that amount. So I'm going to go into enter a payment, and then I'm going to select from the bottom of the list here the way that they've paid for that, the refund by Visa. So I'll have both of them on the same invoice, and they're going to cancel each other out. And now we have a balance of 0. So this has gone back into inventory, and the customer has been refunded their payment. So the other option is that they didn't make a payment at all, in which case then just do the top portion of the screen where you've got the item that was purchased, you've returned it back into inventory, and because it is zeroed out, you won't need to do a refund for them at all. The next scenario is that it's a different day with a partial payment. So what we want to do is go find that customer who came in and she has her invoice in hand, and we're going to take a look at it. Yvonne is the person, and she purchased this vase and she has made a partial payment on it, but she does not want to go ahead with this purchase anymore. But she purchased it on a different date. And so one of the things that if it's our store policy that we would give her a store credit for this and she can come in and purchase something else at a different date, then I'm going to leave this invoice as it is here, except for one thing. I want to be able to zero this invoice out. So down at the bottom of the screen, I'm going to enter a payment, and that's going to put in today's date. And I'm going to use something called a credit memo. So the credit memo is going to be for the amount that she has not paid, okay? And that's the amount that's down here with the 82 cents. So they are a little bit different, so you can tell them apart at least. And now I'm going to say done. But now I need to create a new invoice, which is going to give her her refund and also put this back into inventory. So the original invoice now has been zeroed out, okay? So I'm telling you that this is the original invoice. All right, and again, you would put a note in here to explain why this has been refunded, returned, didn't like the color, whatever it is, initial it, okay? Put in the date and so that you know exactly when it came back, because you wouldn't be able to tell by the date up here. You can tell by the credit memo down here. But now I want to put this item back into inventory. And this is the funky vase, all right? And she paid for Visa of $135. So I'm going to create a brand new invoice for Yvonne, put the customer name in here. Okay, I'm going to go to the search button, and if I knew the exact product, then I could look it up. If I had the item number, if I had a barcode scanner, I'm going to put in the quantity of -1 because she is returning the product, which gives me a negative balance down here. But there are two things to go onto this invoice. The first is the refund to her. So I'm going to say enter a payment, and this was a refund on her Visa, but the amount of the refund is -135, not the full amount, because she only partially paid for it. But when I do that, it gives me the rest of it is still owed. So I need to zero out this invoice as well. And when I do that, I'm going to click on the enter a payment. And this time I'm going to select the credit memo. Now on the previous invoice, the credit memo was a positive $135.82. And on this one, it is a negative $135.82. So when I click done, this invoice is now zeroed out. The customer has received her refund. The retail product has gone back into inventory. And now when I go back to my invoices, I can see that this one is here. I'm going to put the note in again to say this is the refund. I'm just putting this in for you. This is the refund invoice. Okay, and you can see because it says refund up here in the top right-hand corner. All right, and then I would put in the reason for the refund. You may even say see original invoice and then put that original invoice number in there. Okay, so that you know which one is which. And if you wanted to go back to that invoice and put this invoice number on it, it might save you time later on if you're looking them up and thinking, oh, I don't remember what that was or where did I go to with it. The other thing I can do is I can say find, and I'm going to go do a find for Yvonne so that I can see those two invoices side by side. So this is the first invoice where she had a partial payment and it's now paid in full because we had that credit memo on there. And if we go take a look at it, you can see the credit memo for $135.82 and the Visa payment. And now if we go back to the second invoice, which is the exact same amount in the negative, it's showing that this was a refund. And if I go in there, there's the credit memo for minus $135.82. So on my end of day reports, those two numbers are going to zero out. I've got a positive amount and a negative amount for the exact same amount. So it's not going to change the income that I have received. However, what it will do for me is it's reclaiming my taxes as well, so that at the end of the day, it's going to say that I'm owed this amount of money for taxes, which if I previously paid it, then I need to get that money back. The other option that we have in here is that the customer has paid for this in full. So let's go do a find for this invoice with the customer coming in. 3.8, there we go. This customer has paid for this in full, but they are returning it and they want a refund. So what I'm going to do in this case is leave this as it is. I'm going to definitely put a note in here, refund, a returned product. The reason why they didn't like this, who's in charge, who has taken this, and then what is the date that they are returning this product. Because now I want to go and create a new invoice, different day, different invoice. So I'm going to click on new invoice. This is for Wilson Peters. Okay, it's put that in there. That was the green vase that they are returning. So I'm going to put that in and it's found the item. I'm going to enter in -1. So now again, this is a negative amount on the invoice. Really important that you put that in as the quantity of -1. Okay, otherwise you're not going to be able to do a refund on it. Go down to the enter a payment and we're going to go down and select what the payment was or store credit, either one of those. And if the payment that you're using is not in this list, go down to the word edit. And then you can add in any of the other types of refunds that you are handling. Maybe there's a different card that you need and you notice that it wasn't in there. So then once you've added that into the list, it will now appear in your list so that you can use that as well. So this person did use Visa originally, so that's what I'm using now. And we're going to say done. And if you do have the authorization number and you want to put that authorization number in for the transaction, you can do that. As I've said before, you do not put credit cards in here. This is not a secured field. This is for the authorization number only, or a check number. Okay, we're going to say done. We can say go to form view, and this takes us directly back to the invoice that shows that this is a refund. They have been refunded the full amount. And again, this will reclaim our taxes on that amount as well in our end of day reports. So the taxes will be deducted by that amount of the refund. Okay, so Chrissy, we're up to the time again for our next poll that you've got. If you want to go ahead and do that.
Sounds good. Which of the following do you use in FrameReady? Invoices, statements, accounts receivable, end of day report, or any other sales reports? And here's the results.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. So using the invoices part, the statements, maybe not the accounts receivable. So that'll be interesting because that's the section we're going to go into next. And so give you a chance to take a look at it and how it works. Okay, so we're going to go into the next section, which is the accounts receivable and being able to zero out your bad debts. Because what will happen is that eventually over time, unfortunately, everyone has a bad debt every now and then. And if I was to go into my accounts receivable and I want to look at them by invoices this time rather than the aging ones. And I could put a specific date range in there, or I could just say everything up to a certain time period. And I'm going to do both of those. So if I do it, first of all, everything up to a certain time period. So let's say up to the prior to the year 2019, proceed. So this is going to show me all of the outstanding invoices that I have on here. And I know that's so small, but you can see that there's some items in here that are from the year 2016. So what I want to do is say it's time for me to zero them out, because if I'm looking at them, it's telling me that the balance that I have of money that is owed to me is overinflated because of these outstanding invoices. So what you want to do is you want to zero them out at the end of the year. And what I'm going to do is go back into the accounts receivable by invoices, and this time I'm just going to put in the year, and that is the year is 2016. And I'm going to click on proceed, because now I have a piece of paper that's showing me all of them. I can save this as a PDF if I want. I can print it out and then go through these invoices one at a time to deal with them and find out what I need to do with them. You do want to identify items as a bad debt. And the question is, when do you claim them as a bad debt? And that is when you are sure that you are not going to receive any payment for them. Now, you don't have to wait 5 years to know that. I'm sure that, you know, there's probably in different situations where, you know, the person's not coming back, they're not going to pay for this, and you can zero it out earlier. So I'm going to go back to the invoices and say, and just out of curiosity, I think I had minimize, oh, there we go. So I'm going to show you a larger screen version of it. So there's the accounts receivable that I chose, everything prior to the year 2019. So you can see on the list, it's every single invoice here for the year 2016 or 2017 or later, but it's showing me that the balance or the money that's coming into me or that's owed to me is far higher than what truly is owed to me right now. And it's nice to know what your accounts receivable are sometimes, so that you know how much money is yet to come into my business right now. So I'm going to go back to the find invoices, and in this case I want to enter in the date, and I'm just putting the year in there so I can find those invoices. And here are the invoices from 2016. But this is all of the invoices. So what I want specifically, and I'm going to click on the find button again, is entering in the date, 2016, and the key thing is balance. The balance is greater than 0, so they still owe money on an invoice from that time period. And here they are. Some of them are unpaid, some of them have deposits on them, but I need to write these off as a bad debt. I know that this money is not going to be coming in. So I'm going to go to the very first one on the list, and I'm going to click on the data entry button. And when I go down to the payment section, I'm going to select from this list, should be in here, the word bad debt. Now check with your accountant. They may want you to use credit memo as well, or you can specifically say bad debt. So I'm going to enter in this one as a bad debt. Once I've done that and I've clicked done, I'm going to go to form view. It's just faster for me. And I have ruled this off on my ledger. I've said that this is the bad debt, and it's no longer part of the money that I'm expecting to come into my business at that time. The other option for you is if you wanted to see your accounts receivable as of this date right now, you can go back into the accounts receivable and just specifically ask under the invoices for the dates prior to. So if this was the year 2020, I'm going to say anything from 2020, well, let's do 2021, ... anything after that date. And this should tell you what you have outstanding right now. So that will give you the amount for this current year. So that's a way for you to be able to check. If you have other numbers in there, I would recommend you go back to your list view here, find them, and go through them, because as we go through them, you'll see that they're going to be marked off as paid in full. And it doesn't really matter whether it was they haven't paid anything at all or they've made a partial payment. If it's something that you're zeroing out as a bad debt and you know that you are not going to receive this money at all, do let your accountant know, because they'll want to see all of these items that are the bad debts so that they can find them. And other ways for you to track is that if you wanted to write in here bad debt, that would be another really good idea. As I said, something that you're going to track. Another thing, if you wanted to do something a little faster, if you wanted to put into the terms field, you could certainly do that, put that in there as a term. I'm going to add that in there as bad debt. And that, you know, one of the things is that if you do that, add that into that list, then I don't need to go and type it each time. And then it might make it a little bit easier for you to be able to find those, as long as you're not writing over any information that you really wanted to keep in there. You don't need to do both locations as long as you put one in. If you wanted to put the date in to say when is the date that you zeroed this out to say that it was a bad debt, then you'd be able to, you know, put the date in under the invoice notes. When I come back up here to the list view, as you can see, they're all being zeroed out, they're being marked as paid in full. But then if I did want to find those items, I could use the find button to either type into the invoice note field, bad debt, and it would find all of them. And so here's some other ones from 2013, 2014 that were issued or zeroed out as a bad debt. Or I can use that drop-down list from the terms field that I added that bad debt in there. The important thing though is be consistent, because if one person's doing it one way, and then you're only going to find part of them on the list, somebody else is doing it another way, those aren't going to be included. So as long as everyone knows what your policies are, and if you haven't seen this already in the notes field, where you can keep notes, what you can do is you can actually use this to track all of the information using the to-do list or the message center to track your policies, your procedures. And there's actually an article on our online help that will give you some ideas and suggestions on the things that you might want to put in there. And they're easy to update, and that way when somebody needs to know something, they can go in there, find the information they want, and see, how do I handle a return? What's our policy on refunds? What is our policy on canceling a work order? And all of these would be listed so they know exactly what to do and when to do it. Super. So if there aren't any questions on zeroing out your bad debt and cleaning up your accounts receivable, that's all we have today, Chrissy.
I do have one question for you. And what happens if someone comes in and pays after we have written the invoice of a bad debt?
Right. So now you need to go back in and you're going to recreate that invoice. And here's the tricky part too, because let's go back in there. That's a great question. Let's go back into the invoice screen, because I've got two of them in here, and I think one of them was a partial payment. Yeah. So they had paid for part of it. So now what I want to do is, and this was back in years ago, a year ago, whatever it was. So now that they're coming back in and they want to pay for it, I think I'm going to definitely suggest that you make up a new invoice, that you're going to put in the item that they've purchased. You're going to put in the bad debt again. Yeah, actually, no, you can't, because you've already zeroed that out. This is definitely one that I would say, let's talk to your accountant about it, because on one hand, you do need to go in and, yeah, because you've already zeroed out the taxes. They've already reclaimed the taxes for you. So I think that you definitely want to ask your accountant whether they want to create a brand new invoice for you, and you're going to show that they had made this previous payment. You could possibly put in that same date for the payment, okay? And then you're going to accept the payment now, or you're going to go back in here and we're going to go back to that same invoice, because I don't want to, no, you have to, if you've reclaimed, it all depends. If you have reclaimed the taxes on there, then you're going to have to put them back in again. If you haven't reclaimed the taxes, then you can just come back in, remove the bad debt, and take the payment. So those are the two options. One is that you haven't reclaimed the taxes, so just take the payment on it, remove the bad debt. If you have reclaimed the taxes on them, then you're going to have to issue a new invoice for this product and say that they have paid for part of it already. Okay, hopefully that answers that question for you. That's great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you again next time. Bye.